the kitchen window as she laughed into her phone, pacing the backyard like a caged animal. 3 months ago, Lana would have invited him into her conversations. Now she stepped outside whenever it rang. "You're paranoid," he whispered to himself, turning back to his laptop. The accounting software blinked with familiar numbers: payroll, expenses, quarterly projections. Everything in perfect order, just like his life used to be. But the phone calls had started in September, always at night, always outside. Lana walked back in, sliding the device into her pocket with practiced smoothness. "Work?" Harold asked, not looking up from his screen. "Client emergency," she said, moving toward the stairs. "I'm exhausted. Going to shower and sleep." Harold nodded, typing a meaningless formula into his spreadsheet. "Client emergency at 9:30 on a Thursday night, at an HR firm. Right." The water started upstairs. Harold minimized his work screen and opened their shared cloud storage: photos, documents, backup files from their phones. He'd set up the automatic sync years ago when they first moved in together. Lana had thought it was sweet how he wanted to share everything. Her text messages populated in real time. The most recent thread made his stomach drop. Derek writes, "Can't wait for tomorrow night? Same place?" Lana writes, "Yes." "He's working late again. Won't suspect anything." Derek writes, "Good. Brought you something special." Lana writes, "You spoil me. Love you." Harold stared at the screen until the words blurred. "Love you." She hadn't said that to him in months. The shower was still running upstairs. He scrolled up through weeks of messages: hotel bookings, restaurant reservations, intimate photos he'd never seen before. His hands didn't shake. That surprised him. Instead, he felt something cold settle in his chest, like ice forming on a lake. He opened a new document and began typing locations, times, credit card numbers, every detail organized in neat columns, just like the ledgers at work. The shower stopped. Harold closed the laptop and went back to his spreadsheet, fingers moving automatically across the keyboard. When Lana came down in her robe, he looked up with the same tired smile he'd worn for 15 years. "How was your day?" he asked. "Long," she said, not meeting his eyes. "I'm going to bed early. Sleep well." She paused at the bottom of the stairs. For a moment, Harold thought she might say something real. Instead, she just nodded and disappeared upstairs. Harold waited until he heard their bedroom door close, then opened the laptop again. Derek Banner, Senior Vice President at Pinnacle Tech Solutions, Lana's company. Married, 2 kids, drives a black Tesla Model S. Harold pulled up the employee directory and found Derek's photo. Square jaw, expensive suit, the kind of confident smile that belonged in corporate headshots. Everything Harold wasn't. But Harold had something Derek didn't: access to Pinnacle's financial systems. 3 years ago, when Lana started at Pinnacle, they'd needed help setting up their expense tracking software. Harold had spent 2 weekends configuring their database, creating user permissions, establishing backup protocols. He still had administrator access. He logged in and pulled Derek's expense reports. Dinner at Russo's, $93. Hotel room at the Marriott downtown, $247. Spa package for 2 at the Ritz-Carlton, $412. All charged to the company card as client entertainment. Harold smiled for the first time in weeks. Derek was stealing from his own company to fund the affair. Sloppy, arrogant, exactly what Harold would expect from someone who thought he was untouchable. But Harold wasn't ready to act yet. He needed more. He needed everything. Over the next 2 weeks, Harold became a different person. Not the Harold who asked how Lana's day went, or made her coffee in the morning, or pretended not to notice when she started showering before bed instead of after. This Harold was patient, methodical. He collected data like specimens in a lab. Lana's phone backed up every night at 2 a.m. Harold set his alarm for 2:15 and reviewed her messages, photos, call logs. He cross-referenced credit card statements with her location data. He mapped out their meeting places, their routines, their lies. She told Harold she was working late Tuesday nights for a new client onboarding project. She was actually at Derek's apartment in the warehouse district. She said she had girls' nights with her friend Julianne on Fridays. She was actually at different hotels with Derek, trying new places like it was a game. The most incriminating evidence came from Derek's company phone, which auto-synced to Pinnacle's cloud storage. Harold found photos of Lana in Derek's office after hours, wearing the black dress Harold had bought her for their anniversary. Videos of them in the conference room during lunch breaks. Audio recordings of them mocking Harold's boring job and pathetic social skills. He actually asked if I wanted to go to Dave & Buster's for our anniversary. Lana's voice crackled through Harold's headphones. Dave & Buster's. Like we're 12 years old. Derek's laughter sounded like a rich man's version of amusement. What did you tell him? I said I had to work late. Then I came here and you made me forget all about mini golf and chicken tenders. More laughter. Harold saved the file and added it to his growing archive. By early November, Harold had everything. 6 weeks of evidence, hundreds of photos, credit card fraud worth nearly $30,000. Detailed records of Derek using company resources for personal affairs, but he still wasn't ready. Harold needed Lana to feel safe, comfortable. He needed her to get sloppy and make bigger mistakes. So he became the perfect husband again. He cooked her favorite meals. He bought flowers on random Tuesdays. He suggested weekend trips to places they'd never been. You're being so sweet lately, Lana said one night, cutting into the salmon he'd prepared. What's the occasion? Can't I just appreciate my wife? Harold asked, refilling her wine glass. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Of course, it's just different. Different how? I don't know. You seem happier lately. More confident. Harold was happier. For the first time in months, he had a purpose, a plan. He was 3 moves ahead of everyone else in the game, and they didn't even know they were playing. Maybe I'm just grateful for what we have, he said. Lana's smile faltered for just a second. Yeah, me too. That weekend, Harold suggested they update their financial planning, joint savings account, retirement funds, emergency reserves. Lana signed the papers without reading them, trusting Harold to handle the boring details like she always had. What she didn't know was that Harold had moved everything into individual accounts with his name only. Their joint savings, $43,000, was now scattered across 3 different banks in Harold's personal portfolio. The retirement account had been transferred to a self-directed IRA that Lana couldn't access without his signature. She'd find out eventually, but by then it would be too late. Harold also opened accounts she didn't know about. Business checking for his consulting work, investment portfolios in his name only. Even a safety deposit box at a bank across town where he stored printed copies of everything. Photos, messages, financial records, legal documents. The preparation phase was almost complete. Harold just needed one more piece of the puzzle. Seth Lansing worked in Harold's office as a part-time intern while finishing his accounting degree. 22 years old, quiet, observant. The kind of person who noticed things but didn't gossip about them. Seth, Harold said one Tuesday morning, can I ask you something? Sure, Mr. Trenton. If someone was stealing from their company, hypothetically, how would you prove it? Seth glanced around the empty office. Well, what kind of stealing? Credit card fraud, fake expense reports, using company resources for personal benefit. Hypothetically? Seth asked with a slight smile. Hypothetically, you'd need documentation. Bank records, receipts, testimony from witnesses. The more evidence, the stronger the case. Why? Harold shrugged. Just curious. I've been reading about corporate fraud cases. Seth nodded, but Harold could see the wheels turning. Seth was smart. He'd figure it out eventually, but Harold didn't mind. He might need an ally before this was over. The following Friday, Harold put his plan into motion. He called in sick to work, a rare occurrence that wouldn't raise suspicion. Instead of staying home, he drove to Pinnacle Tech Solutions and parked across the street. At 11:30 a.m., he watched Derek's Tesla pull out of the parking garage. Harold had been tracking Derek's movements for weeks. Every Friday, Derek left work early for client meetings that were actually trips to his apartment with Lana. They'd spend the afternoon together, then Derek would return to the office around 4 p.m. to maintain appearances. Harold waited 15 minutes, then walked into Pinnacle's lobby like he belonged there. I'm here to see Derek Banner, he told the receptionist. I'm Harold Trenton, Lana's husband. Derek asked me to drop off some financial documents. The receptionist smiled. Oh, Mr. Trenton, Lana talks about you all the time. I think Derek stepped out, but I can get someone from his team. Actually, he said to just leave everything on his desk. Company policy stuff, pretty boring. Of course, 5th floor, corner office. You need a visitor badge? That would be great. Harold rode the elevator to the 5th floor, badge clipped to his jacket like he was just another businessman handling routine paperwork. Derek's office was exactly what he'd expected. Floor-to-ceiling windows, leather furniture, awards and certificates covering one wall. Harold didn't waste time. He plugged a USB drive into Derek's computer and ran the data extraction software he'd downloaded earlier. 47 minutes to copy Derek's entire hard drive. While he waited, Harold placed a small recording device under Derek's desk and another inside the air vent above his chair. The USB finished copying. Harold pocketed the drive and left a manila envelope on Derek's desk with "Confidential" written across the front. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a message typed in standard business font. "Your services are no longer required." Derek would assume it was a prank or mistake from another department. He'd probably throw it away without thinking twice. But Harold would have it on camera when Derek read it, and that footage might be useful later. Harold left Pinnacle feeling electric. 6 months ago, he was a boring accountant who got excited about quarterly reports. Now he was dismantling people's lives with the precision of a surgeon. He stopped at a hardware store and bought more surveillance equipment, wireless cameras, audio recorders, GPS trackers. Everything legal to own, everything useful for gathering information. That evening, Lana came home with Chinese takeout and a guilty smile. "Sorry I'm so late," she said, unpacking containers on the kitchen counter. "Julianne needed to talk through some personal stuff." Harold nodded, helping her serve the food. He'd watched Julianne leave work at 3 p.m. and spend the afternoon shopping at Target. Lana had been at Derek's apartment until 20 minutes ago. "Everything okay with Julianne?" he asked. "Marriage problems? Her husband's being difficult about money. That's tough. Marriage is hard work." Lana glanced at him. "Yeah, it is." They ate dinner in comfortable silence, both lost in their own thoughts. Harold was calculating timelines and evidence chains. Lana was probably thinking about Derek's hands on her skin or whatever lies she'd tell Harold next week. After dinner, Harold excused himself to take out the trash. Instead, he walked to Derek's Tesla in the parking lot and placed a GPS tracker under the rear bumper. The device would send location updates to Harold's phone every 5 minutes for the next 6 months. Now he could track Derek's movements in real time. Every meeting, every affair location, every lie would be documented automatically. Harold was ready for phase 2. Monday morning, Harold arrived at work early and called the fraud hotline for Pinnacle Tech Solutions. He disguised his voice slightly and gave them Derek's name, employee ID, and specific details about the credit card abuse. "I'm calling about expense report fraud," Harold said. "Derek Banner has been charging personal expenses to the company card for months. Hotels, restaurants, spa treatments, all falsely reported as client entertainment." "Can you provide specific examples?" the investigator asked. Harold read dates, amounts, and merchant names from his notes. 26 separate incidents totaling just over $30,000. "We'll investigate this immediately," the investigator said. "Can you provide your name and contact information?" "I prefer to remain anonymous. Check his expense reports against his credit card statements." "The evidence speaks for itself." Harold hung up and went back to his regular work, processing invoices and updating spreadsheets like nothing had happened. But inside, he was counting down the hours until Derek's world started falling apart. The investigation moved faster than Harold expected. By Wednesday afternoon, Derek's company credit card had been suspended. By Friday, internal auditors were reviewing his expense reports for the past 2 years. Harold monitored the situation through Pinnacle's employee portal, which still granted him access to certain administrative functions. Derek had been called into 3 separate meetings with HR and legal. His assistant had been questioned about his travel schedules and client interactions. Lana came home Friday night looking stressed. "Rough week?" Harold asked. "Someone's been spreading rumors about Derek," she said, pouring herself a large glass of wine, "saying he's been stealing from the company. That's serious. What kind of rumors?" "Credit card stuff. Personal expenses charged to his business account. It's obviously someone with a grudge trying to get him fired." Harold nodded sympathetically. "Office politics can be brutal. I'm sure the truth will come out." "I hope so. Derek's a good guy." "He doesn't deserve this." Harold squeezed her shoulder. "The right thing usually happens in the end." Lana relaxed under his touch, probably relieved that her boring husband was being so understanding about her work stress. If only she knew that her boring husband had orchestrated the entire situation. That weekend, Harold implemented the next phase of his plan. He printed every photo, every text message, every piece of evidence he'd collected over the past 3 months. The documentation filled 2 large binders, organized chronologically with tabs and index labels. Harold's attention to detail would have impressed his old accounting professors. He made copies of everything and stored them in multiple locations: his office, his safety deposit box, a storage unit he'd rented under a false name. If anything happened to one set of evidence, he had backups. Harold also prepared digital packages for different audiences. One folder contained evidence of Derek's corporate fraud, formatted for law enforcement and company investigators. Another contained photos and messages proving the affair, designed for Derek's wife and family. A third package focused on Lana's role in the scheme, perfect for divorce proceedings and asset protection. Each package told a different story, but they all led to the same conclusion. Derek and Lana had betrayed everyone who trusted them, and now they would face consequences. Monday morning brought news that Derek had been placed on administrative leave, pending the fraud investigation. Lana tried to hide her panic, but Harold could see it in the way she gripped her coffee mug and checked her phone every 30 seconds. "Everything okay?" he asked. "Fine," she said too quickly. "Just work stuff. Want to talk about it? It's nothing you'd understand. Corporate politics." Harold bristled at the dismissive tone, but he kept his expression neutral. "Try me. I might surprise you." Lana looked at him like she was seeing a stranger. "Since when do you care about office drama?" "Since my wife started coming home stressed every night." "I want to help." "You can help by not asking so many questions." She left for work without kissing him goodbye, something she'd done automatically for 15 years until recently. Harold watched her drive away, then opened his laptop and began composing an email. The recipient was Derek's wife, Michelle. Harold had found her contact information through social media and public records. Michelle Banner, 36 years old, works as a pediatric nurse, has 2 young children, and no idea that her husband is a lying thief. Harold's email was brief and professional. "Mrs. Banner, I have information about your husband's recent workplace difficulties that you should be aware of. The situation is more complicated than you might realize. I can provide documentation if you're interested. This is not a joke or scam. Your family's financial security may be at risk." He included a secure phone number and email address he'd set up specifically for this contact. No personal information, no emotional appeals, just facts and an offer to provide evidence. Harold sent the email and went to work, wondering how long it would take Michelle to respond. The answer came that afternoon. Michelle called the secure number while Harold was reviewing quarterly projections. "This is Michelle Banner," she said, her voice tight with controlled anxiety. "You sent me an email about my husband." "Thank you for calling," Harold said. "I know this is difficult, but you deserve to know what's happening. Who are you?" "How do you know about Derek's work problems?" "I'm someone who discovered information that affects your family. Derek has been stealing money from his company and using it to fund an extramarital affair. The fraud investigation is just the beginning." Silence on the line. Harold could hear children playing in the background. "That's impossible," Michelle said finally. "Derek wouldn't—" "He's not perfect, but he wouldn't steal. I can prove everything I'm telling you. Photos, financial records, recorded conversations. But I want you to understand, once you see this evidence, you can't unsee it. Your marriage will never be the same." "Send me everything," Michelle said without hesitation. "I need to know." Harold spent 2 hours that evening preparing Michelle's evidence package. Photos of Derek and Lana together, copies of fraudulent expense reports, bank records showing money transfers, audio recordings of their private conversations. He organized everything chronologically, starting with the first signs of the affair and building to the corporate fraud. By the time Michelle finished reading, she'd have a complete picture of how her husband had betrayed both his family and his employer. Harold delivered the package personally, driving to Michelle's house after she'd put the children to bed. She answered the door in scrubs, having just returned from a late shift at the hospital. "You're smaller than I expected," she said, studying Harold's face. "Disappointed?" "Relieved, actually." "I was afraid you might be some kind of stalker or extortionist." Harold handed her the folder. "I'm just someone who believes people should know the truth about their lives." Michelle flipped through the first few pages, her expression hardening with each photograph. "How long have you known?" she asked. 3 months. "How long have you suspected?" 6 months, maybe longer. Derek's been working late, traveling more, spending money we didn't have. I thought he was just ambitious, pushing for that promotion." She closed the folder. I was stupid. You trusted your husband. That's not stupid. Michelle looked at Harold with new curiosity. What's your connection to all this? You're not doing this out of charity. Harold considered lying, then decided Michelle deserved honesty. Derek's affair partner is my wife. Oh. Michelle's anger softened into something like sympathy. I'm sorry. Don't be. We're both better off knowing the truth. Michelle nodded, clutching the evidence folder against her chest. What happens now? That's up to you, but if you want advice, protect yourself financially before Derek realizes what you know. Change passwords, secure bank accounts, consult a lawyer. This is going to get ugly. What about you? What are you going to do about your wife? Harold smiled, and for the first time, Michelle looked slightly afraid of him. I'm just getting started, he said. Harold drove home feeling lighter than he had in months. 2 down, 2 to go. Derek was facing corporate fraud charges and a divorce that would destroy his finances. Lana didn't know it yet, but her world was about to collapse too. The next morning brought unexpected news. Julianne called Harold's office, something that had never happened before. Harold, it's Julianne Pierce, Lana's friend. I need to talk to you about something important. Harold kept his voice neutral. What can I help you with? Not over the phone. Can you meet me for coffee today? Is everything okay? Please, Harold, it's about Lana. They met at a small cafe near Harold's office. Julianne looked nervous, constantly checking her phone and glancing around like she expected someone to be watching. Thank you for meeting me, she said. I wasn't sure you'd come. You said it was about Lana. Julianne stirred her coffee unnecessarily. She's in trouble, Harold. Big trouble. What kind of trouble? The kind that could ruin her life. And maybe yours too. Harold leaned back in his chair, studying Julianne's face. She was scared, but not of him. She was scared of something else, something bigger. I'm listening, he said. Lana's been having an affair, Julianne said in a rush. With her boss, Derek, for months. They've been stealing money from the company to pay for hotels and trips and expensive dinners. Derek's already been suspended, and they're going to arrest him soon. Harold nodded calmly. That's terrible. Why are you telling me this? Because Lana's planning to blame everything on Derek. She's going to say he coerced her, that she was a victim. She's already been talking to lawyers about how to protect herself. Protect herself from what? From the fraud charges? From the divorce? From losing everything? Julianne leaned forward, lowering her voice. Harold, she's planning to take you for everything you're worth. The house, the savings, your retirement fund. She thinks you're too weak to fight back. Harold felt that familiar ice forming in his chest. And you're telling me this because I'm tired of being used. Lana's been making me lie for her, cover for her, help her deceive you. I thought it was just girl code, helping a friend through a rough patch. But this isn't friendship. It's conspiracy. Harold sipped his coffee, processing this new information. Julianne wasn't just Lana's accomplice. She was also her potential weakness, someone with inside knowledge who could be turned against her. What does Lana think happened to Derek? Harold asked. She thinks one of his enemies at work reported him. Corporate jealousy, that kind of thing. She has no idea someone's been watching them, collecting evidence. Interesting. What would you do if you were in my position? Julianne stared at him. You already know, don't you, about the affair? Harold didn't answer directly. What would you do? I'd protect myself. Get a lawyer, secure my assets, file for divorce before she could. That's good advice. Anything else? I'd make sure she couldn't pin the fraud on me if things went bad. Cover my tracks, document everything. Harold smiled. You're smarter than I expected, Julianne. Smart enough to know when I'm being played by everyone. Harold finished his coffee and stood up. Thank you for the warning. It's more helpful than you know. Harold, what are you going to do? The right thing, he said, leaving money on the table. Eventually. Harold drove back to work, his mind racing with new possibilities. Julianne's betrayal of Lana was unexpected but useful. If Julianne could be convinced to testify against Lana in legal proceedings, Harold's case would be even stronger. But first, he needed to accelerate his timeline. If Lana was already planning her legal strategy, Harold needed to act before she could establish herself as Derek's victim. That afternoon, Harold called a divorce attorney. Not just any attorney, but the best family law specialist in the city. Patricia Winters had a reputation for ruthless efficiency and complete discretion. I need to discuss a complex marital situation, Harold told her secretary. Financial fraud, adultery, asset protection. Can Miss Winters see me today? She has an opening at 4:30. I'll take it. Harold spent his lunch break organizing evidence for the divorce proceedings. Unlike the criminal case against Derek, this would require different documentation, financial records, proof of adultery, evidence of Lana's planning to defraud him. Patricia Winters was exactly what Harold had expected: sharp, professional, and completely unsympathetic to emotional appeals. How long have you been married? She asked, reviewing Harold's preliminary information. 15 years. No children. Assets? House worth 400,000, joint savings around 40,000, retirement accounts totaling 200,000, plus my business income and her salary. You said she's planning to file first? According to my source, yes. She wants to portray herself as the victim of her lover's manipulation while claiming I was emotionally abusive or financially controlling. Patricia raised an eyebrow. Were you? I managed our finances because I'm an accountant, and she didn't want to be bothered with details. Everything was transparent, jointly owned, mutually agreed upon. Until recently. What changed recently? Harold handed her a folder. I moved our assets into individual accounts when I discovered the affair. Everything's documented, all legal, all within my rights as joint account holder. Patricia flipped through bank statements and legal documents. You've been busy. I wanted to protect myself before the situation escalated. Smart. What's your goal here? I want her to get nothing. No alimony, no property settlement, no claim on my retirement funds. I want her to face the consequences of her choices without being able to use me as a safety net. That's aggressive. Judges don't like vindictive divorces. This isn't vindictive. It's justice. She committed adultery, participated in corporate fraud, and planned to defraud me. I have evidence of all of it. Patricia studied Harold's face. You're not what I expected when you called. What did you expect? A victim. Someone angry and hurt and desperate for revenge. She closed the folder. But you're not a victim, are you? Harold smiled. Not anymore. They spent the next hour planning Harold's legal strategy. File first before Lana could establish her narrative. Request immediate asset protection based on evidence of fraud planning. Demand full financial disclosure while providing selective evidence of Lana's misconduct. This will get ugly, Patricia warned. She'll fight back hard once she realizes what's happening. I'm counting on it, Harold said. The harder she fights, the more desperate she'll look. And desperate people make mistakes. Harold left Patricia's office feeling like he was finally in control of his life again. For months, Lana and Derek had been playing games with his marriage, his trust, his future. Now it was his turn to play. That evening, Lana came home looking exhausted. Derek's suspension had been extended indefinitely, and the company was conducting interviews with every employee who'd worked with him. They questioned me today, she told Harold over dinner. About Derek's expense reports, his client meetings, his work schedule. That must have been stressful. They made it sound like I was involved somehow, like I knew what he was doing and didn't report it. Harold cut his steak carefully. Did you know? Of course not. How would I know about his expense reports? You worked closely with him, didn't you? Attended client meetings, traveled together sometimes? Lana's fork paused halfway to her mouth. Why are you asking me that? Just curious. If they're questioning everyone who worked with Derek, they must be looking for patterns. People who might have witnessed something suspicious. I never witnessed anything suspicious. Harold nodded. I'm sure you told them that. Yes, I did. Good, the truth is always the best defense. Lana finished eating in silence, probably wondering why Harold was suddenly interested in her work situation. She didn't know that Harold had already provided the investigators with evidence of her involvement in Derek's fraud scheme. Anonymous tips were a beautiful thing. Harold had called Pinnacle's ethics hotline 3 times in the past week, each time from a different phone, each time providing specific information about Lana's role in Derek's misconduct. Lana had attended the fake client meetings. She'd signed off on fraudulent expense reports as Derek's departmental liaison. She'd even used Derek's company credit card for personal purchases, thinking the transactions would be hidden in his account. Harold had photos of her using the card at restaurants and shops. He had copies of her digital signature on expense reports that were clearly fraudulent. He had recorded conversations where she discussed using company resources for personal benefit. The investigators would find all of this evidence eventually, but Harold was helping them connect the dots faster. Friday morning brought the news Harold had been waiting for. Derek was arrested at his home on charges of corporate fraud, embezzlement, and tax evasion. The total amount stolen was over $50,000, much more than Harold had initially calculated. Lana called Harold at work, crying. "They arrested Derek," she said. "FBI agents came to the office this morning. They seized his computer, his files, everything." "I'm sorry to hear that. Are you okay?" "No, I'm not okay. They're saying he might go to prison for 10 years. 10 years, Harold. That's what happens when people steal from their employers. But what if they think I was involved? What if they arrest me too?" Harold had been waiting for this moment. "Why would they arrest you?" "I don't know. Maybe because I worked with him, or because we were friends." "Friends?" Silence on the line. Harold could almost hear Lana's brain working, trying to figure out how much he knew. "We were close," she said finally. "Professionally." "I see. Well, if you didn't do anything wrong, you should be fine. Should I get a lawyer?" "That's up to you. Innocent people don't usually need lawyers, but if it would make you feel better, I think I should. Just in case." "Good idea. I can recommend someone if you'd like." Harold gave her the name of a criminal defense attorney. Not a very good one, but someone who would take her money and provide mediocre representation. Meanwhile, Harold would be working with the best family law attorney in the city. That afternoon, Harold received a call from Michelle Banner. "Derek was arrested this morning," she said without preamble. "I heard." "How are you holding up?" "Better than expected. I served him with divorce papers while he was in jail. His lawyer was furious, but there wasn't much he could do." Harold laughed. "Excellent timing. I learned from the best. How's your situation progressing?" Lana doesn't know yet, but she's starting to suspect that her world is falling apart. She called me crying about Derek's arrest, worried that she'll be charged too. Will she be? That depends on how much evidence the investigators find, and how cooperative her former accomplices are willing to be. Michelle was quiet for a moment. Accomplices plural? Lana had help covering up the affair. Friends who provided alibis, co-workers who facilitated meetings, that sort of thing. People who might be willing to testify against her if they think it will save themselves. You've really thought this through. I've had time to plan. Derek's asking about you, by the way. He knows someone fed information to the investigators, and he's trying to figure out who. What did you tell him? Nothing. But his lawyer thinks it might have been a disgruntled employee or business rival. Someone with access to company records? Let them think that. The longer they focus on the wrong suspect, the more time I have to prepare. Harold hung up feeling satisfied. Derek was in jail, facing serious federal charges. Michelle was moving forward with her divorce and asset protection. Lana was panicking, but still didn't suspect Harold's involvement. Everything was proceeding according to plan. Saturday morning, Harold woke up early and drove to his safety deposit box. He retrieved copies of all his evidence and organized them into 3 distinct packages. One for Lana's criminal defense attorney, one for the divorce proceedings, and one for the media. The media package was Harold's insurance policy. If Lana somehow managed to escape legal consequences or paint herself as a victim, Harold would leak everything to local news outlets. Photos of her affair, evidence of her fraud participation, recordings of her mocking her husband while stealing his money. Harold didn't want to destroy Lana's reputation unnecessarily, but he wouldn't let her escape justice either. Sunday afternoon, Harold got his chance to set the final phase in motion. Julianne called him directly, something that still felt strange. "Harold, I need to see you again. Something's happened." They met at the same cafe, but this time Julianne looked genuinely frightened. "Lana came to see me last night," she said. "She knows someone's been watching her and Derek. She's trying to figure out who." "What did you tell her?" "Nothing, but she's suspicious of everyone now. She thinks it might be someone from Derek's office, or maybe one of his enemies at the company." "Did she mention my name?" "No, but she's starting to ask weird questions about you. Like whether you've been acting different lately, or if you've shown any interest in her work situation." Harold nodded. "What kind of questions?" She wanted to know if you'd ever asked me about her schedule, or if I thought you were capable of spying on her. I told her you were too boring and trusting to do something like that. Thanks for the vote of confidence. Julianne didn't smile. Harold, she's planning something, I can tell. She's scared and desperate, and that makes her dangerous. Dangerous how? I don't know yet, but she asked me to lie for her if anyone questions me about her relationship with Derek. She wants me to say I never knew they were involved, that I thought they were just work friends. Harold leaned forward. Will you? That depends on what you're offering me. Harold studied Julianne's face. She wasn't just scared, she was calculating, looking for the best deal in a bad situation. What do you want? He asked. Protection. If this goes to trial, I don't want to be charged as an accessory. I helped Lana lie to you, Harold. I provided alibis, covered for her meetings with Derek, even helped her delete text messages from her phone. If the prosecutors want to make an example of everyone involved, you could face charges, Harold finished. Exactly. So I need to know, are you going to protect me if I help you? Harold pretended to consider this. In reality, he'd been planning to use Julianne's testimony from the beginning. Her cooperation would make the case against Lana much stronger. I can't promise you won't face any consequences, he said. But if you're willing to testify about Lana's planning and deception, I'll make sure the prosecutors know you cooperated. What about immunity? I'm not a prosecutor. But cooperating witnesses usually get better deals than accessories who stay silent. Julianne nodded slowly. What do you need me to do? Tell me everything. Every lie you helped her tell, every meeting you covered for, every conversation where she discussed her plans. I need dates, times, specific details. For the next hour, Julianne provided Harold with a detailed confession of her role in Lana's deception. She'd helped Lana create fake work emergencies to explain late nights. She'd confirmed false stories about girls' nights and shopping trips. She'd even helped Lana practice lies before difficult conversations with Harold. Most damaging of all, Julianne had witnessed conversations where Lana discussed her plans to divorce Harold and take half of everything, including his retirement savings and business assets. She said you were too passive to fight back, Julianne admitted. She thought you'd just accept whatever settlement she offered because you don't like conflict. When was this conversation? 2 weeks ago, right after Derek got suspended. She was panicking about money and started talking about her backup plan. Harold recorded everything on his phone with Julianne's permission. By the end of their meeting, he had enough evidence to prove that Lana's affair wasn't just adultery. It was part of a calculated plan to defraud him. That evening, Harold had dinner ready when Lana came home. Grilled chicken, roasted vegetables, her favorite wine. Everything perfect, just like the old days. You're being so sweet lately, Lana said, settling into her chair. I feel terrible that I've been so stressed and distracted. You've been dealing with a lot at work, I understand. It's more than that, though. This whole situation with Derek has me thinking about our marriage, our future together. Harold kept his expression neutral. What about our future? I love you, Harold. I know I haven't been the best wife lately, but I want to work on that. I want us to be happy again. I want that too. Lana reached across the table and took his hand. Maybe we should go away together. A long weekend somewhere nice, away from all this drama. What do you think? Harold squeezed her fingers gently. That sounds wonderful. Where would you like to go? Somewhere we've never been. Maybe the mountains? We could rent a cabin, disconnect from everything, just focus on each other. I'll look into it, Harold promised. But he wouldn't be booking any romantic getaways. Harold had recognized the desperation in Lana's voice, the calculated affection in her touch. She was trying to secure his loyalty before her world collapsed completely. Too late for that. Monday morning brought news that made Harold's coffee taste even better. Lana had been called in for questioning by federal investigators. Not as a witness this time, as a potential co-conspirator. She called Harold from the parking lot outside the FBI field office. They think I helped Derek steal the money, she said, her voice shaking. They have evidence that I used his company credit card, that I signed expense reports, that I knew about the fake client meetings. What did you tell them? The truth. That I didn't know Derek was stealing. That I thought everything was legitimate company business? Harold almost laughed. Even now, even facing federal charges, Lana was still lying to him. Did they believe you? I don't know. They kept asking about my relationship with Derek, about personal trips and dinners. They made it sound like we were having an affair. Were you? The question hung in the air like a loaded tool. Harold had never asked directly before, and Lana clearly wasn't prepared for it. Of course not, she said finally. Derek and I were colleagues. Friends, maybe, but nothing more. Then you should be fine. Innocent people don't go to prison. I hope you're right. Harold, I love you. Whatever happens with this investigation, I need you to know that I love you too, Harold lied, but he was done pretending. That afternoon, Harold drove to Patricia Winter's office and signed the divorce papers. You want to serve her when? Patricia asked. Tomorrow, while she's still dealing with the federal investigation. I want her to understand that her problems are just beginning. That's cold, even for me. She's been planning to divorce me and steal my assets for months. I'm just beating her to it. Patricia shrugged. Your marriage, your choice. But she's going to fight this hard. Let her fight. I have all the evidence, all the money, and all the legal high ground. What's she going to fight with? The process server found Lana at work Tuesday afternoon. Harold wasn't there to see her reaction, but he imagined it was spectacular. Shock, anger, panic, maybe even some genuine hurt that her boring husband had outmaneuvered her so completely. Lana called him 20 minutes later, screaming, You filed for divorce? Are you insane? I'm dealing with a federal investigation and you decide to attack me now? I'm not attacking you, Harold said calmly. I'm protecting myself. Protecting yourself from what? From a wife who's been lying to me for months, who committed fraud with her lover and planned to steal my assets in a divorce. Should I keep pretending I don't know about any of that? Silence. Harold could hear Lana's breathing, quick and shallow. You know, she said finally, I know everything. Every lie, every meeting, every dollar Derek stole to pay for your affair. I know about your plans to divorce me and take half of everything. I know about the fake work emergencies and the made-up girls' nights. I know about Julianne helping you practice your lies. How long have you known? Since September. I've been collecting evidence for months. You've been spying on me? I've been protecting myself from a criminal conspiracy. There's a difference. Lana's voice dropped to a whisper. What do you want? Nothing from you. Keep whatever personal items you can carry. Everything else stays with me. You can't do this. Half of everything we own is legally mine. Not anymore. Check the paperwork, Lana. I moved our assets months ago, all legally, all within my rights as joint account holder. You own nothing but your car and whatever's in your purse. I'll fight this. I'll take you to court. With what money? Your salary's been suspended pending the fraud investigation. Derek's in jail, and any lawyer who takes your case will want payment up front. Harold hung up before Lana could respond. He'd said everything that needed saying. That evening, Harold came home to find the house empty. Lana had taken some clothes and personal items, but everything else remained exactly where it belonged. She'd left her wedding ring on the kitchen counter with a note, You win. But Harold wasn't finished yet. Wednesday morning, he called Detective Sarah Kim, the lead investigator on Derek's fraud case. I have additional evidence you should see, Harold told her. Financial records, recorded conversations, documentation of the conspiracy. What kind of conspiracy? Derek Banner and Lana Trenton weren't just having an affair. They were planning to use the stolen money to fund a new life together. Lana was going to divorce me and claim half our assets, then combine that with Derek's stolen funds to finance their escape. Detective Kim was interested. Harold spent 2 hours at the police station, providing evidence and testimony. By the end of the meeting, Lana had been upgraded from potential witness to active suspect. Thursday afternoon, Lana was arrested at her temporary apartment. Harold watched the news coverage from his office, feeling something that might have been satisfaction if it weren't so cold. The local news portrayed it as a dramatic corporate fraud case. Executive and subordinate stealing company funds to finance their affair, betraying spouses and employer alike. Harold was mentioned as the victim's husband, a boring accountant who'd helped investigators uncover the conspiracy. Boring, if only they knew. Friday evening, Harold got a call from an unknown number. This is Lana. I get one phone call. I'm listening. I need you to bail me out. Please, I can't stay in here. Why would I do that? Because somewhere under all this anger, you still love me. We were married for 15 years, Harold. That has to mean something. Harold considered hanging up. Instead, he decided to give Lana a gift: the truth. "I did love you," he said. "For 15 years, I loved you more than my own life. I would have done anything for you, given you anything you wanted. All you had to do was ask." "Harold, but you didn't ask. You lied. You cheated. You stole from me and planned to destroy me. You turned our marriage into a crime scene. I made mistakes. I can change." "No, you can't, because you don't think you did anything wrong. Even now, sitting in jail, you think you're the victim. You think I'm the villain for refusing to be destroyed quietly? What do you want me to say?" "Nothing. There's nothing you can say that I want to hear anymore." Harold hung up and blocked the number. Over the weekend, Harold received visits from both Julianne and Michelle Banner. Julianne wanted to discuss her testimony in the upcoming trial. Michelle wanted to thank him for his help with her divorce. "Derek's going to plead guilty," Michelle told him. "His lawyer says he'll get 5 to 7 years if he cooperates with the prosecution." "What about Lana?" "Her lawyer's pushing for a plea deal too, but the prosecutors want her to testify against Derek first. Apparently, they think she was more involved than Derek claimed." Harold nodded. Derek was probably trying to minimize Lana's role to protect her, not knowing that she'd thrown him under the bus months ago in her conversations with Julianne. "How are you handling everything?" Harold asked. "Better than I expected. The divorce should be final next month, and I'll get most of our assets since Derek can't claim property bought with stolen money. The kids are adjusting, and honestly, we're all relieved he's gone." "Any regrets?" Michelle considered this. "I regret not seeing it sooner, but I don't regret ending it." "What about you?" "No regrets at all." Monday morning brought news that Lana had been denied bail. "Flight risk," the judge ruled. "Too many assets hidden, too many lies told, too much evidence of planning to evade consequences." Harold's divorce proceeded smoothly. With Lana in jail and unable to afford competent legal representation, her court-appointed attorney advised her to accept Harold's settlement offer. She would receive nothing except her personal belongings and whatever remained in her individual checking account, approximately $1,200. The house, the savings, the retirement funds, Harold's business assets, everything stayed with him. 15 years of marriage dissolved into paperwork and signatures. 3 months later, Harold sat in a federal courthouse watching Lana's sentencing hearing. She'd pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit fraud, embezzlement, and tax evasion. The prosecutor recommended 4 years in prison. Her lawyer asked for probation and community service. The judge split the difference: 3 years in federal prison, followed by 2 years of supervised probation and full restitution of stolen funds. Lana turned to look at Harold before the bailiff led her away. Her expression wasn't angry anymore, just empty, defeated. She'd finally understood that her boring husband had outplayed her completely. Harold felt nothing watching her leave the courtroom. No satisfaction, no regret, no lingering love or hatred, just the quiet contentment of a ledger finally balanced. Outside the courthouse, Julianne was waiting for him. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Like I can start living my life again? Any plans?" Harold smiled, thinking about the investment opportunities he'd been researching, the business partnerships he'd been considering, the trips he'd been planning. "I'm thinking about buying a boat," he said. 6 months later, Harold was sitting on the deck of his new cabin cruiser, watching the sunset over Lake Erie. The boat was beautiful, 42 feet of polished wood and gleaming brass, with enough space for entertaining or solitary cruising. He'd named it Folded Ledger. His phone buzzed with a text from Seth, who was now Harold's business partner in a consulting firm that they'd started together. "New client wants to meet tomorrow. Fraud investigation case. Interested?" Harold typed back, "Always happy to help people find the truth." He poured himself a glass of wine and opened his laptop. 3 new emails from potential clients, all dealing with financial investigations. Word was spreading that Harold Trenton was very good at uncovering hidden assets and corporate misconduct. It seemed he'd found his calling. Harold closed the laptop and watched the sun disappear behind the horizon. Tomorrow he'd go back to his new office, help new clients solve their problems, build his growing business. But tonight, he was exactly where he wanted to be. Alone on his boat, master of his own life, accountable to no one but himself. The old Harold would have felt guilty about destroying so many lives. The new Harold understood that he hadn't destroyed anything. He'd simply revealed what was already broken. Derek was serving 6 years in federal prison. His wife had divorced him, His children barely remembered his name. Justice. Lana was in her second year of incarceration, working in the prison laundry for 20 cents an hour, learning that actions have consequences. Justice. Julianne had received immunity in exchange for her testimony and moved to another state to start over. She sent Harold a Christmas card every year with no return address. Probably justice, though Harold didn't much care either way. And Harold? Harold had his boat, his business, his freedom, and his self-respect. He'd learned that boring accountants could be more dangerous than anyone suspected if they were patient enough and smart enough to play the long game. The stars came out over the lake, reflecting on the dark water like scattered diamonds. Harold finished his wine and went below deck to his comfortable cabin, where everything was exactly as he'd arranged it. Perfect order. Complete control. No lies, no deception, no one plotting against him in the shadows. Harold Trenton slept better than he had in years.